Let me show you my vault. And if you get hit. Jack Benny made the most famous vault in radio history in 1945. It was all a lie. It's just sound effects and jokes about being cheap. But Jack also had a real safe. One that was locked for 50 years after he died. There were tape reels inside that said, "Do not open." When the researchers played them for real, they could hear Jack's voice telling lies that could have ended his career. The tapes show why he really quit vaudeville and what really happened during those years he was away at war. The 14th of February, 1894 was his birthday, but his mother had already chosen that name months before. Even though Emma Sachs was pregnant in Waukegan, she went all the way to Chicago to give birth. She thought that a birth certificate from a big city would help her son become a famous musician. She did not desire for her son to come from a small town. She thought he should be important. She had a weak body but a smart mind. She was also sure that her son would play the violin in front of packed music halls when he grew up. Meyer, his dad, told a different story. He was from Poland. He began by selling things on the streets of Chicago and worked his way up until he could open a bar. He wasn't very interested in show business and believed it was a bad choice for any good Jewish family. But Emma spoke up more in that marriage. She shaped Benjamin from the time he could hold an instrument. They lived in a small house on South Genesee Street in Waukegan again by the time he was 3 years old. Franklin could see Lake Michigan from their front window, which was a problem. He was supposed to spend 2 hours every day practicing his violin, but all he could do was stare out at the lake. Meyer kept his saloon open and later opened a clothing store. Emma, on the other hand, kept pushing music. Ben became a good big brother when Florence was born in 1900, but he still spent his days playing the violin. That year, for his 6th birthday, he got a half-size violin as a present. He started training right away with Professor Harlow, who charged 50 cents twice a week. Benjamin did really well. He was called a genius by some people. He was often taken to Chicago to study with Hugo Kortschak at the music college, but he didn't like training. His mother played the piano with him and told him, "You can do it better." He kept doing it while barely moving his bow. People in Waukegan had such faith in him that they raised money to pay for his study abroad in Europe. Everyone was shocked when he said no to the offer. He was moving away from that path already. Everything he did at school got worse. He played jokes. He didn't go to class. It was winter, and he smeared hamburger cheese behind the classroom heater. That was the most famous one. The school had to close when it melted. He was kicked out of school his first year and told by the director that he could come back if he changed, but he never did. By then, Benjamin had already found a job at the Barrison Theater as a violinist in the pit orchestra. He was playing for live shows while his friends learned math. His father's bar was where he really learned how to do things. It was full of loud people and traveling artists. He learned what made people laugh and what didn't there. In 1911, the Marx Brothers came to town for the night, and Franklin's mother Minnie went to see him play. His parents turned down her offer of $7.50 a week with room and board to go on tour with them. They said it would make him bad. They slammed the door shut, but that might have changed his life. Benjamin, who was 17 at the time, made a big choice that same year. He quit school for good and joined a comedy show with Cora Salisbury, a widow of 43 years. She told his parents she would keep him away from bad people and stage door girls. They didn't stop traveling and did 4 shows a day in dusty halls all over the Midwest. Ben made $7.50 a week with their show called From Grand Opera to Ragtime. It wasn't much. But it was the start. Then, from 19 to 12, almost everything fell apart. The famous violinist Jan Kubelik sent him lawyers who said they would sue him because their names were too close. Benjamin changed his stage name to Ben K. Benny because he was scared. But that didn't make things better. After a few years, another act named Ben Burney came after him. That is how the name Jack Benny came about. A name that came from sailors calling each other Jack in a chance meeting with comic Benny Rubin. The name stuck by 1921. In 1914, Cora quit the act to take care of her mother, so Jack teamed up with musician Lyman Woods. By 1916, their show was making $350 to $400 a week, which was a lot of money for that time. The houses where they played were fancy from Boston to San Francisco, blending serious music with silly looks and comic timing. But when they played at the Palace Theater in New York in 1917, everything fell apart. It was vaudeville's biggest stage, and they blew it. The crowd didn't care that their act was like an animal show. Jack joined the Navy after the partnership finished. During World War I, Jack was 23 years old when he was called up and sent to the Great Lakes Naval Training Center. In the beginning, he played the violin at events and celebrations. But one night, something changed. People began to boo when he played the rosary during a talent show. Pat O'Brien, another sailor, yelled at him to tell a story. When Jack said something short, the whole room laughed out loud. That was the time. That's when the funny person was born. Performing in the Great Lakes Review became a regular thing for him. Having a bad time as a character called Izzy. He put on shows for up to 5,000 sailors. He learned about time. He learned about charm. Also, he learned that one joke was more likely to get a thank you than an hour of music. He kept that character after the war finished in 1918. The United States was worn out, broke, and still had to deal with food rations. So Jack Benny played the role of a cheapskate that he had developed in the Navy. He started a solo show called Fiddle Phonology, in which he played the violin and made cheap jokes. He made fun of himself. He took fake cash out of his pocket. People really liked it. It could not have been a better time. People laughed because it hit home for them. He wasn't making fun of them. He was one of them. He went back to theater with Lyman Woods and made even more money. They changed their act by adding music to their stand-up and getting second-billed spots all over the country. They played in some of Chicago's best theaters and in big towns, too. But the big moment, the Palace in New York, was over, and he still felt bad about failing. Jack kept going though. He took some strings off the violin. It got funnier because of him. He slowly changed into something new once he had a name that was his. There was a man who could stand in front of thousands of people, barely move his face, say one line, and make everyone fall over. He wasn't a failed artist or a side act. It was 1924 when Jack Benny made it to Broadway. He was already 30 years old and had been on the road for more than 10 years. He had been on stage before. This was different. It wasn't just another comedy show that Benny's Follies was. He finally had the chance to try something new. He held his violin up in front of the bright lights, but this time he wasn't trying to show off how good he was. He played purposely a little badly, just enough to make people laugh, even though he had been playing since he was 6 years old and could do it beautifully. Broadway had never seen such a mix of dry humor, a little music, and a lot of confidence. It was fresh for the New York Times. He had been going back and forth for years between names like Benjamin Kobelski and Ben K. Benny, but finally he chose Jack Benny. It worked and stuck. In 1926, after 2 years, he took a chance on a show called The Great Temptations. It was risky, wild, and maybe even a little bad. He played a witty fiddler again, but this time he made up lines on the spot. It took 15 minutes to finish sketches that were only meant to last 5 minutes. A lot of people loved it. The producers did not. They begged him to follow the script and keep the show on time. People really liked it. It could not have been a better time. People laughed because it hit home for them. He wasn't making fun of them. He was one of them. He went back to theater with Lyman Woods and made even more money. They changed their act by adding music to their stand-up and getting second-billed spots all over the country. They played in some of Chicago's best theaters and in big towns, too. But the big moment, the Palace in New York, was over, and he still felt bad about failing. Jack kept going though. He took some strings off the violin. It got funnier because of him. He slowly changed into something new once he had a name that was his. There was a man who could stand in front of thousands of people, barely move his face, say one line, and make everyone fall over. He wasn't a failed artist or a side act. It was 1924 when Jack Benny made it to Broadway. He was already 30 years old and had been on the road for more than 10 years. He had been on stage before. This was different. It wasn't just another comedy show that Benny's Follies was. He finally had the chance to try something new. He held his violin up in front of the bright lights, but this time he wasn't trying to show off how good he was. He played purposely a little badly, just enough to make people laugh, even though he had been playing since he was 6 years old and could do it beautifully. Broadway had never seen such a mix of dry humor, a little music, and a lot of confidence. It was fresh for the New York Times. He had been going back and forth for years between names like Benjamin Kobelski and Ben K. Benny, but finally he chose Jack Benny. It worked and stuck. In 1926, after 2 years, he took a chance on a show called The Great Temptations. It was risky, wild, and maybe even a little bad. He played a witty fiddler again, but this time he made up lines on the spot. It took 15 minutes to finish sketches that were only meant to last 5 minutes. A lot of people loved it. The producers did not. They begged him to follow the script and keep the show on time. That he didn't care, though. He used the artistic freedom that his contract gave him. There were so many fights backstage that the company promised to fire him if he didn't stop. He wasn't able to. That's when Broadway may have begun to see that Jack Benny was different from the others. It wasn't just a show for him. He was making changes to the rules. In the same year, something strange took place. Jack met Sadie Marks. It wasn't really their first meeting. It was around 1919 or 1920, and Jack was about 30 years old. Zippo Marks asked him to a family Passover dinner in Vancouver. A girl named Sadie, 14, was there and was crazy about the stars. She played a piece on the violin for him to show how good she was. He didn't even wait around to hear it. He asked Zippo to help him get away. He was heard. The next night, she sat with her friends in the front row of the Orpheum Theater and stared straight ahead when he went on stage. Not a single smile. Not a single laugh. She got back at her. They didn't see each other again until 1925 or 1926, when she was 20 years old and selling underwear at the May Company in downtown Los Angeles. Jack came in and bought a record amount of women's underwear. Every day he came back. While he was on tour, he called her all the time. This wasn't just a quick hookup. It felt off and moved slowly. Strange, but it worked in some way. Jack Benny got the lead part in Artists and Models in 1927. This was the best part of his time on Broadway. He made $1,500 a week, which is around $25,000. It wasn't just money. It proved something. Something about what he did clicked. It was his habit to walk on stage, set up a beautiful classical piece, and then play the violin so badly that it was terrible. The crowd roared. He used long pauses, fake anger, and snark at just the right times. The smart people in the crowd knew how good he really was. But he'd rather laugh than be praised. It worked for him to turn his own failure into an art form. In the same year that Jack was making people laugh, he was also hurt in a way that almost ended his career. A theater boss said that he wasn't paying orchestra musicians enough. All of a sudden, the whispers weren't about jokes or skills. They had to do with money. The union for bands got involved. Threats of being put on a blacklist were made. His shows were being canceled by theater owners. It was bad. To keep his job, Jack had to pay payments and say sorry. The damage was done, though. Jack Benny was said to be cheap by some people. That he would rip off artists to save money. And when he played the cheapskate role on the radio years later, no one forgot. It wasn't just a show. There was a real crime behind it. Even so, not everything that year was bad. The wedding took place at the Clayton Hotel in Waukegan, Illinois, on January 14, 1927. Sadie was now known as Mary Livingstone. During the event, something strange happened when it was Jack's turn to stomp the glass. Jack wasn't the one who passed out. It was Mary. She passed out right in front of everyone. She found roses when she woke up, though. She had already been getting one red rose every day from Jack. She thought they'd stop after the wedding. They didn't. Up until the day he died in 1974, he sent her one red rose every single day. 48 years. Every day, one rose. In 1934, they took in a baby girl named Joan who was only 2 weeks old. Jack looked at her and asked, "How can you want to adopt something that looks so weird?" They did bring her home, though. Mary had already talked Jack into going into radio by that time. There was less vaudeville. It was hard to tour. Radio meant being stable. She was right, too. They got lots of money. Joan's wedding cost $25,000 when she got married at age 19. The dress she wore was made in France. Flowers were sent from the Netherlands. The Beverly Hills Hotel was the place where the party took place. There was a lot of money spent on the wedding, which Hollywood had never seen before. In 1932, Jack got his big break on the radio with the Canada Dry Show. It began on May 2nd, and by the end of the week, 40 million people were hearing. At first, it didn't make sense. There was still music and jokes going on in Jack's head. He took playing the violin very seriously because he thought it would please people. It wasn't. The scores were bad. It didn't matter to anyone. After that, something made sense. He gave up trying to impress. He meant for the violin to be bad. He let other people make fun of him. He turned himself into a joke. All of a sudden, the people watching loved it. He went to CBS in 1933. He was 39 years old. The number didn't age, though, he just stopped it. After that, he was always 39. He said getting 40 wasn't funny. In that same year, he came up with the vault gag, which was a silly underground castle with security alarms, booby traps, and even a guard who had been locked inside since the Civil War. It was silly. It had a lot of stage and was a hit. A lot of people thought that vault was real. The group was taking shape by 1936. Don Wilson walked in with a huge voice. Phil Harris showed up with his southern charm. He called Jack Jackson and stole scenes with just 1 or 2 lines. The next person was Eddie Anderson. Rochester. He was the first black man to have a daily spot on AM radio across the country. He did more than just serve Jack on the show. He was smarter than him. He had the last word. Every time he spoke, he broke down walls. And when stations in the South tried to ban shows with Rochester in them, Jack wouldn't appear without him. Jack Benny ruled the radio from 1937 to 1945. His show was always one of the top 3. He signed a deal in 1944 that paid him $25,000 a week. These days, that's more than $400,000. He made around $3 million a year. The man who joked about being cheap wasn't always that way, though. During World War II, he bought war bonds with 10% of the money he made from the radio. He performed for more than 3 million people over 32,000 miles with the USO. He took more than just the vault on tour. He made people laugh when they really needed it. The vault opened for business on January 7, 1945. The alarm went off and the doors squeaked. The guard, Ed, stood there. People thought about the whole thing and heard only sounds. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a sign. Ronald Colman was on the show in 1946. Leo DeRocher did the same thing. The vault turned into a club for famous and wealthy people. Fans wrote letters asking Jack to open the vault for charity, even though it was made up. It made sense to them because it was a part of something bigger. It had to do with safety. It was about getting money. It was about having fun through tough times. By 1948, Jack had made going to the vault a Christmas ritual. His December 19th holiday special was one of the most watched ever. In it, he gave Don Wilson a gift, then changed his mind, and took it back, all while hiding the real numbers in the vault. The part worked because it was old. It made being cheap funny instead of mean. People in the US still watched Jack Benny even after they started spending more money after the war. That's not how the IRS felt in real life. Jack made $375,000 a year, but he only claimed $19 for fun things he did. Jimmy and Gloria Stewart went to dinner with him in one episode, but he made them pay. After she spilled salad on his suit, he claimed the cost of dry cleaning it. He didn't try to hide from the reports, though, he put them on display. They were a part of the joke. He thought he had finally made it in 1929. Many of MGM's stars were in the 1929 musical Hollywood Review, which ran for 2 hours and was called The Hollywood Review. The movie went on to win $1 million and was even up for Best Picture. But Benny's act was stiff, wooden, and not quite right. He played the violin in a forced way. He didn't time things right. After his lawyer pushed for it, MGM just signed him to a 5-year deal. It was a quiet drop for them, though, after his next movie, Chasing Rainbows, did badly. After only a few months, he was back on Broadway, feeling ashamed. That first movie part wasn't a total failure. It changed how people thought about him. Studios began to see him as tense, uncertain, and tough to cast. He thought about that one fall in 1929 for a long time. With Broadway Melody of 1936, a big-budget movie with $1 million budget, he got another chance in 1935. Benny played a rival Broadway producer and began making up lines that made the story better. Roy Del Ruth, his director, didn't like it at all. What did he want Benny to do? Read the book. Crew members remembered screaming matches that went on for hours because they fought so much. Benny thought the timing had to be right. Del Ruth thought he was just being hard to deal with. People didn't want to work with Benny after the movie came out, even though it made almost $2.9 million and was nominated for Best Picture. That label stuck around almost as well as the one from his first movie. Then 1937 came along. Jack was on holiday with Mary Livingstone in Cannes when he met a man who said his name was Albert Shapiro and was a Nicaraguan diplomat. He offered to use his official immunity to sneak $2,100 worth of jewelry past customs for Mary. Benny believed in him. The man's real name was Nathan Shapiro, and he had already done time in Leavenworth for fraud. No one told him this. The scam fell apart when Benny got back to New York on August 30th. It was Shapiro who hid the gold on himself. Rosa Weber, his maid, turned him in after he said things against Nazism. In 1939, Jack was in front of Judge Vincent L. Liebel and was fined $10,000 with a 1-year prison term that would not be served. The judge told him, "You should be very ashamed of yourself." He was barely able to whisper, "I do." It also caught George Burns. He got his wife Gracie a $4,085 diamond bracelet from Chaparral to cover up burn scars from when she was a child. Was given a $8 fine. His total went up to $17,770 because of legal fees. They could have both seen their lives fall apart, but instead they made it funny. On their radio shows, they made jokes about their past crimes and costly mistakes. Burns even made a joke about having to go see a probation officer. They loved it. Their sponsors did not drop them. And in fact, they became even more popular. The government gave Rosa Weber $6,114 because she was the maid who told on the scam. Jack never gave up on making movies work. In 1945, he played the lead role in The Horn Blows at Midnight, a fiction story about an angel who was told to destroy Earth. It cost Warner Brothers $1.8 million to make. The timing was terrible. There was a death in the White House 8 days before the movie came out. The whole country was sad. Most people didn't want a comedy about killing the world. The movie lost $861,000. It only made $970,000. Some people said it was too much work and had no point. Jack didn't run away from the bad thing, though. He used it as a joke on his shows for 20 years. His jokes about how bad the movie was made it more well-known than it would have been if it had been a hit. In 1950, Benny did something different for the first time. Watching TV. His first show on CBS aired on October 28. There were only 4 shows set for the first season. He had to keep his radio job, and he wasn't sure how he'd look on TV at 56 years old. In his first speech, he even joked that he would kill himself if the show didn't work out. It didn't fail, though. It went off. 20 million people watched every week by 1952. Lucky Strike paid a lot of money to support. The show ran every week by 1960, and Benny became one of the most famous TV stars. He tried new things on that stage. Ronald Reagan, who would later become president, was in a vault sketch in 1954. Back then, it wasn't common for guests to be a part of a main story, but Benny did it. He was also open to young artists. Johnny Carson came on November 20, 1955, and Benny told him to keep getting better. "You'll soon have your picture on TV Guide." Carson thought about it a lot. He copied Benny's facial movements, timing, and sense of humor. After many years, he became the host of the longest-running late-night show in history. Jack Benny worked all the way through the 1960s. From 1964 to 1965, his last season on NBC took the vault sketches even further and turned them into satires about the Cold War. Flamethrowers, alligator moats, and even guard plants named Irving could be found in the vault. There were subtle comments about how much Americans care about security in these jokes. Carson kept going to the set. As Benny taught them all the new moves he had made, their friendship grew stronger. The Smothers Brothers wouldn't copy his style after the show finished on April 16, 1965, which caused a lot of tension on air. NBC knew they were showing the end of an important event and paid extra to do it. Benny didn't go away when he retired. With his guest spots, he spoke to the Times. He was the host of a show with Bob Hope and the Beach Boys in 1965.